have to give judgment over to them. Because people in a loving community are always far more gracious, far more loving, far more expansive than we are to ourselves. The harshest judge we have is our own selves. And we have got to stop acting like God of the forms and give control over to God and be a child again. Unless we have the faith of a child, we cannot enter the kingdom of God. We have too many adults in the Christian church. Too many adults who think they know enough to judge themselves. This is very, very poor parenting, but then their parents judge them, and so on, back to Adam and Eve, right? It's a human condition. But we have to understand that this is a particular cultural trait, and it doesn't need to be so. And all cultures come from cult. What we decide is true, what we decide to worship. And if we worship this Jewish dude from Palestine, we would not judge ourselves any more than Jesus judged him or any of his disciples judged themselves. Self-judgment is always a form of arrogance. And when we stop doing that, then we might actually experience some liberation. And I think it's because there is such a spiritual impoverishment, such self-judgment in the white Christian community that it breeds insecurity. And insecurity breeds a kind of self-protectiveness. And so even though there's all kinds of wealth, and I don't just mean material wealth, money, I mean technical expertise, I mean education, knowledge, skills. There's so much wealth in the white American community, but so little is given away, so little is shared. Have you ever gone abroad and you come back, or you've heard people come back and say, oh my God, these people, they're so poor, and they only eat meat like once a week, and yet what little they have, they give it to us. They're just so generous and they're so happy, I can't believe it. That's a wonderful testimony. But do you know what they're saying after we leave? These Americans are some of the richest people we've ever seen, and they're so stingy. They don't share anything. We give everything, and then when it's their turn, they want to go Dutch. What is that? What does it mean for Christians to go Dutch? Where is Dutch in the Bible? You know, I see Greek and Hebrew, I don't see Dutch. So, we're not naturally selfish or greedy people. Our culture tells us that we live in a world of scarcity, and we might lose everything one day. And since our culture is built on individualism, which means pull myself up by the bootstraps, if I fail, then I need to support myself. Since I succeeded without the help of others, then when I fail, then I'm on my own. So therefore, I always have to have enough that when I fail, I can support myself. And so security is a goal in the white American culture. You know, you make $25,000 a year, and you say, gosh, if I just made $50,000 a year, I'd feel secure. And then you make $50,000, and then your friends make $75,000, and you say, well, if I made $70,000, they seem more secure than me. If I just made $75,000 like them, then I'd feel secure. And then there's another people that's making $750,000 a year. So if I'm like that, then I'd really be secure. Then I really wouldn't need to worry. Even if the stock market crashed, at $750,000 a year, I really wouldn't need to worry. And because security is a goal, because it's a very goal-oriented society, we never feel secure enough to pour ourselves out, to be generous, to give ourselves over to God and God's mission. Generosity is a lifestyle. Generosity is a posture. It is a disposition. It is a way of life. It is not a goal. Why do we have CCDs, Christian Community Development Associations and organizations, mostly in inner cities? I think it's great that we have it in inner cities. We desperately need it in inner city Minneapolis and Chicago and New Orleans and everywhere else. But I want to ask the question, why don't we have CCDs in Beverly Hills and Bel Air? Why don't we have it in the Upper East Side and Nassau County and Martha's Vineyard and Winnetka, Chicago? Edina in Minneapolis, Greenwich, Connecticut. Does that make any sense? Are you following me? Okay, you know how I'm saying that? These are spiritual wastelands. There is such spiritual poverty in these places. These places have so much insecurity, fear, and anxiety. You can feel it in the air. You can cut it with chopsticks. Okay. Yeah. You wouldn't believe the things I can do with chopsticks. Anyway, I mean, we're in New Orleans. I found out from a friend here that the tap water here comes from the Mississippi River. Well, that's better than the Mexican Gulf, right? But that's good. But some people drink the tap water here, some people don't. But most people drink the tap water in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The Twin Cities is the first metropolitan area where the Mississippi River flows through. It comes out of northern Minnesota. So, you wonder what it's like after a 1,000-mile journey. But if the Mississippi River was totally undrinkable, we could just say, okay, how do we provide drinking water to the residents of New Orleans? Because the Mississippi River is so polluted we can't drink it. And we can try to fix the problem itself. But some people might think, wait a minute, what's going on upstream? What's going on in Memphis? What's going on in St. Louis? Is there poison being released upstream? Maybe all the way as far north as Minneapolis, St. Paul. Something's going on there. So some of us need to swim upstream and figure out who is causing so much damage down here. I feel like the CCD movement sometimes is too much focus at the delta and not at the top, where there are some very powerful and rich people poisoning the water who continue to do that and leave us little people to deal with living and survival on a day-to-day basis. What if we had a CCD on Wall Street, one of the most fearful, insecure places in the world, and preached the gospel of Jesus Christ and said, in the kingdom of God, there is no lack, there is no shortage. You can be fabulously wealthy in the kingdom of God with not one penny in your hand. Jesus died homeless, penniless, with barely any clothing. Even his clothing was auctioned off. And yet, Jesus was never poor. Poverty is a state of mind. But we can't ask the poor to be poor. We have to help the poor to understand that they're rich in the kingdom, and then they can give it up. Right? But that takes confidence. That takes an ability to see that everything here in this world that we see is an illusion. I had the privilege of having a really nice conversation a couple of mornings ago with one of the leaders at CCDA. I mean, I don't need to tell you his name, so I'll just call him Mark Charles. And I've been a pastor for 20 years. I know how to do pastoral confidentiality. So this Mark Charles and I are talking about how are we going to move forward as a country. I mean, there's some things that we can do, gather like this, but there's some deep psychological work that is necessary. And he was telling me that he met with a group of Native American leaders and elders in which he said, we need to do nothing short of adopting white people.